Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. This is Game God Fluent, bringing you episode 1 of what's going to be a new Let's Play. Yes, I'm starting another Let's Play. At the risk of getting in trouble for doing so, I want to keep in mind with you guys that, yes, even though I start a lot of games and play a lot of different ones, I do plan to go back to them from time to time. And over the grand course of my channel, granted, it may take like years, but I do plan to finish everything I start. I know that sounds crazy considering how many open Let's Plays I currently have, but, you know, we'll return to them here and there, and it's all good. So I hope you guys don't mind that and are still enjoying. We'll try to record as many in this first batch as I can. And we're playing a game that is a recent release. I think it came out earlier this year, or maybe last year. I don't remember, but it's an open world CRPG. Very old school, very unforgiving in the sense that there's not a lot of hand-holding and stuff like that, and very text-heavy and very open world. So we are playing Vagrus, the Riven Realms. So I've only played 7 minutes. In other words, I haven't even played at all. So we're just going to hit play and learn the game together, go on this journey together, and figure things out as we go, starting with the tutorial. So I hope you'll join me for as long as it goes, and let's hit play. Made with Unity. I'm going to go ahead and light up a smoke. I've got some orange juice. I've got a cigarette. Shaking up my orange juice. So yeah, I mean, I hope you guys don't mind this many LPs. Good thing is that there's always something new to play. And I'll make a video one of these days that asks the question of what games I should return to before, like sooner rather than later. And we'll see how that goes. But let's go ahead and enjoy Vagrus. This is delicious orange juice. Disclaimer: Vagrus is a game that involves a fair amount of reading if it is to be enjoyed and experienced as intended by the developers. It's also a difficult game with little hand-holding, where success is by no means guaranteed. You'll probably lose everything several times before getting the hang of leading your traveling company. Vagrus is also a labor of love, created by a tiny team that dared dream big with the support of an amazing little community. We're extremely grateful to all those that helped us along the way with constructive criticism. We're going to play the intro, hold space. Comitatus, an armed traveling company. It usually carries cargo and passengers across the wastelands of the continent. It can get involved in a variety of jobs ranging from trading to mercenary work. Vagrus, a venturer, a vagabond, a captain, the leader of a Comitatus.
The River Realms, they call it. What a fine poetic name for something as rotten and twisted as our land has become. It was not always so. Long ago, the old empire, the noblest and most enduring society created by humankind, spanned almost the entire continent of Zerine, the cradle of man. But after several millennia of progress and incomparable achievements, inevitably, the empire began to fall into stagnation and decadence. Desperately holding on to their privileges and resisting change while trying to avert the collapse of the realm, the emperor and his theocracy took to measures that were worthy of true despots in cruelty. Subjugating weaker realms, enslaving whole nations, strip mining foreign resources, oppressing imperial citizens, war on several fronts, genocide. Eventually, the gods could no longer tolerate such horrors wrought in their name. Foretold by an abundance of divine omens, they descended upon the Empire to right its wrongs. Thus, in a chain of dreadful events that became known as the Calamity, they annihilated the Empire in a matter of days.
Wow.
The gods then finally saw what they had done in their anger and confusion. It is said that so much grief and shame filled them that they were broken and they left this reality, never to return.
Huh.
The continent and its inhabitants seemed dead, but at length survivors began to crawl out of their hiding holes and faced a land that no longer welcomed them. Arcane anomalies, the fallout of the Calamity, now riddled the continent, and people realized that they had to share their new home with changed and twisted creatures. Terrible beings entered through the cracks in the tapestry of reality and rose to rule over the natives. In time, these new powers rebuilt the fallen empire in their own image, and the River Realms, now godless and vengeful, reincarnated from the ashes.
Neat.
The inhabitants of the land, such as I, now eke out a living under the crushing rule of the new empire. The continent itself constantly resists our every attempt at building a cozy home for ourselves. As travel is dangerous, many ventures specialize in transferring cargo and passengers over bleak and deadly leagues of land. Others try to take everything of value from said travelers, or attempt to find buried treasures among the ruins of the old empire. The leaders of the endeavors are, some say, the bravest men and women of the River Realms. Such a leader is called a Vagrus.
Vagrus. All right. Let's go and check the object options. Controls, combat settings. Not much that I really want to mess with here. We'll stick with the defaults. And there's still new stuff coming, although this is an official final release that we're playing. But they do want to continue expanding and improving Vagrus. So let's go ahead and click New Game. We get two modes here. Wasteland mode. This is the way Vagrus was intended to be played by the developers. The setting is a cruel, harsh, unforgiving place, and so the game will not pull any punches. Expect a steep difficulty curve and little to no handholding. Save often because you'll probably run into dead ends and deaths from time to time. And Dissonance mode is tailored more towards a narrative experience. Combat management and almost all other aspects of gameplay are less challenging. No, we're going to go play Wasteland mode. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away. From Ozymandias by Percy Bysshe Shelley, 1818.
Ah, yes, a Vagrus. What a profession. Daring and savvy, always watching the horizon, always looking for an opportunity, and of course, for what is best for his comitatus, eh? And you are a Vagrus too, are you not? Many of your kind have I seen in my long life as a vagabond. Care to listen to a story about your exquisite occupation, good master? It is a tale of woe and terror, but it is also a tale that is true, as I have seen it with mine own eyes.
Okay, so Pilgrims of the Wasteland is a narrative-based prologue to the game, to the actual game itself, and it's more linear, but it opens up quickly after we complete this into the actual game itself. So I'm going to say, tell us your tale, old man. It'll at least help kill the time, and we'll play Pilgrims of the Wasteland.
Wise you are, good master. My tale is of a Vagrus, such as yourself, but one whose fate was cursed and wrought with ill fortune. It all happened a long time ago. 10 years, maybe more. I was but a passenger, traveling rough roads and forgotten ways with this comitatus, south along the feet of the great mountains of the west.
All right.
This comitatus I speak of had fallen under hard times. Perhaps it was due to imperial harassment or unfortunate decisions, or simply bad luck. Ira Franz, saint of roads, does not always smile on us mere mortals. But however it came to pass, their coin was drying up, and their opportunities seemed few and far between. One of the last chances their Vagrus saw was to travel to the remote town of Scrapheap and spend their remaining funds to stock up on cheap scrap metal. This metal could be sold for great profit over in the east and south. It wasn't a bad plan, truly, but it was not without risks either.
Welcome to Pilgrims of the Wasteland, a standalone story of Vagrus, the Riven realms. It serves as an introduction to the setting and also a tutorial to the game. It behooves you to read the tutorial text and follow the instructions to gain a better understanding of how the game works. This icon can be clicked in tutorial windows to show what the section is referring to via a pointer. Note that you have to be on the right UI screen for the pointer to appear. Although Vagrus is an open world game, due to Pilgrims of the Wasteland being a tutorial, it progresses along a narrow guided path in the beginning and opens up only later, after the core mechanics have been introduced. You can access the hotkey list by pressing F11. On the campaign map, your comitatus, not tatus, comitatus, traveling company, always occupies a node and moves between nodes through paths. Moving along paths costs movement points indicated next to each path. Every in-game day, you have a number of movement points to spend before you need to camp. To move, click on a nearby node and select Move from the radial menu. You can select a node that is farther away. The MP cost of moving there will be calculated and the path highlighted. Move to Scrapheap. Okay. 6 movement points. Let's move. Most of the story is presented through interactive texts called events. Events let you make different choices at each step. Some choices can have a number of consequences, while others have various dependencies. Dependencies mean that you can only pick a certain choice if you have the right prerequisite. Skills, perks, characters, and so on. To select a choice, click on it, or use 1 to 9 to select the one you like. Navigate this event to its end. Having gone ahead of the column with a handful of scouts, you watch from afar as your comitatus slowly trudges along broken terrain, making its way south ponderously among dormant geysers. All around you, the hills smolder lazily in the perpetual twilight. Are you all right? Javik's voice resonates with sympathy as he appears next to you on the ridge. You nod slowly but do not look at him, your gaze lost in the distance, where ash cloaks the horizon and the towering mountains to the south and west. You turn to your commies and note his supportive smile. You and Javik have been traveling the realm together for years now. There is no person in the world you trust more than him except perhaps yourself. I know you feel that your hands are tied, but like I said before, you made the right choice by leading us here. Time will tell, but I still have my doubts. It's a long shot and you know it. Javik nods. True, but it's better than just giving up. The crew agrees too. That counts for something, no? It does, yes. Good to know they still have faith in me as their Vagrus. They do have faith in you still, Javik says. It should not come as a surprise since you have known and traveled with most of them for years and years. Some founding members of the Comitatus you could trust with your life, but you have heard stories about Vagri who have been abandoned for less. Times being what they are, Javik trails off, with Imperials cracking down on independence more heavily than before. Business is tough, everyone knows, and they appreciate your efforts to keep us floating. Our plan ought to give us another chance. The plan. When text in an event is highlighted pale blue, it means you have found a codex entry. Clicking these opens the codex and navigates you to the entry. The plan. You talked your traveling company into this a few weeks ago, but with each step towards the western mountains, more and more of them started to have doubts, such as the way of the road, perhaps. The plan involves a desperate attempt at squeezing a low selling price for metal bits out of an old contact of yours in the town of Scrap Heap. The codex is a collection of entries you find throughout your travels. Entries contain information about the world and its inhabitants. When you have unread entries, the crystal on the cover of the closed codex emanates light. Entries are displayed in a list on the left. You can search entries and filter them by category using the buttons on the top. Unread entries are marked by a blue icon and appear on top, while already read entries have a gold icon. The text of the selected entry appears on the right. Information in the codex is supplementary. It is there for those who wish to learn more about the Riven realms. You can close the codex now and continue on your journey. You can open it again by clicking on the book in the bottom right corner. Let's learn about Scrap Heap. It is a town on the edge of Imperial territory, just north of the Molten Tongue and south of the Forest of Shadows. In the smoldering shadow of the great mountains of the west, Scrap Heap rarely sees sunlight, as the skies are forever ashen and overcast. The air is hot and dry. Earthquakes are common. Most of the time, Scrap Heap is engulfed in smoke and ash, and a constant reddish twilight is upon it. Surrounded by a low wall, the town is indeed made of scrap and junk, mostly stone with metal scraps, as well as leather and cloth awnings. A single tall tower stands high above the town on a hill, housing a beacon that aids scavenger teams in their return, but also gives home to the Heap King. Inhabitants wear scarves and masks to aid their breathing. History. Well after the calamity, people flocked to the Molten Kingdom of Devendar Thar, formerly the homeland of all dwarves on the continent, in order to plunder any riches that remain there, especially the rare metal that is still in abundance in the kingdom. Because Devendar Thar is now extremely volcanic and volatile, the scavengers did not dare to dwell in it, only in its close proximity. Thus, the settlement of Scrap Heap was born. The town is not under imperial jurisdiction because the Empire never gave a damn about its existence out on the savage, barely inhabitable mountainside, and simply let gangs and comitati gather and sell the precious metal and ore in one of the border towns. Still, some trade houses sometimes set up a temporary compound there, only to get robbed and driven out months later. Scrap Heap is run by the Heap King, a gang lord who organized the previously chaotic and warring work teams. Squeezing a low selling price for metal bits out of an old contact of yours in the Scrap Heap. Stocking up on said metal by spending your remaining coin and bringing the cargo down south around the Molten Tongue to Devon via Avernum and Ash. So down south around the Molten Tongue. Molten Tongue is the name of a region in western Zarin. It is a gigantic, constantly flowing lava river. The Molten Tongue is a gigantic, forking lava river that covers a vast volcanic plain and hill region at the foot of Devendar Thar, the Molten Kingdom. Volcanic ash from the nearby mountains covers the western sky day and night. Ash and storm clouds gather over the mountains and are lit from below by the fires among the peaks. The active volcanoes keep spitting meteors and liquid fire in the distance. Many small and large lava lakes dot the region, and the ground and stones are either covered in soot or show angry red colors. The giant lava river distorts the air from a distance, and closer to it the heat is unbearable. Before the calamity, Devendar Thar was the kingdom of all dwarves on the continent, a land unmatched in technological advancements, inventions, and ambition. One of the oldest of dwarven royal lines, kings of Devendar Thar were sympathetic to humans and aided them throughout the Second Age, then became fast friends by the Third Age. The Inventor King showed early Imperials the art of metalworking and stonemasonry, helped build their ancient cities, and taught them how to mine ores. Devendar Thar was abundant with metal and precious stones, so much so, in fact, that in their unmatched pride, the Inventor Kings of the late Third Age forgot the wise ways of their forefathers and started refashioning their massive stone fortresses and arching bridges from iron. By the end of the age, gigantic monuments and vast cities made entirely of metal stood among and atop the great mountains of the west. Between them, metal roads were erected high above the canyons and valleys. When the calamity hit, the slumbering volcanoes of Devendar Thar burst with cataclysmic force and melted the iron cities and roads, killing millions in minutes. Large rivers of lava emerged, the sky became ash, the air poison. The few that survived fled the kingdom and became a homeless, wandering, disgruntled people with no hope or future. The area east of the mountains became a no-man's land of volcanic ash and lava. The many lava flows in the central mountain range and most prominent volcanoes merge into a single giant lava river that flows east and travels leagues before gathering into lakes of magma or slowing down and cooling. This river is the Molten Tongue. Not much can live near the lava formations, but that does not mean that fools don't try to travel there every now and again. Due to the calamity, the land is cursed to bleed lava forever, so the Molten Tongue has been spilling forth for over 1,000 years. Wow. To Devon via Avernum and Ash. So Devon is where we're headed. Devon is the largest settlement of the otherwise scarcely populated upper central region of the Empire and its provincial capital. Today, Devon is almost completely underground in a series of dark, cool caverns accessible through chasms opening between the spires and the ruins of the old town. Labyrinth-like tunnels and caves give home to many wraiths and others, and due to its position in the changed empire, Devon now has the Emperor's Road going through it, elevating it to a major city and trading post that managed to outgrow its humble beginnings as a shelter by taxing travelers and providing a sheltered stop on a long north-south journey. Dwellings are carved into the rock or are attached onto rock walls, but even so, Devon is stiflingly crowded. Light is scarce, mostly provided by bright kelp. The city is among its greatest importers. Before the calamity, Devon used to be a middle-sized city, and the Emperor's Road did not pass through it. Yet the Empire chose it as the site for one of his many mysterious projects, the Spires. A crown of dozens of blade-like spires made of smooth black metal reached hundreds of yards towards the sky, occupying another city's worth of area next to Devon after a whopping 20 years of sorcerous construction. During the calamity, most of Devon proper was completely destroyed, but the spires were unscathed, except that they got buried in rubble about halfway to their tops. Even today, nobody knows what their purpose might have been. Nobody could harm the spires in any way, not even leave scratches on their matte surface. Quite a few people survived the catastrophe in nearby cave systems, they changed during the centuries spent living underground and became a new race, the Wraiths. The tunnels they dug under the earth throughout the centuries since is what became the new city. Pretty interesting lore already. Avernum. Avernum is a city, the regional capital of the Empire, where the Molten Tongue meets the Smolderbone Flats. Avernum is surrounded by a stone and bone wall with watchtowers standing every 200 yards. The bones were carried to the site from the plains of bone in the south at great expense and are often carved with elaborate decorations. The houses of the city are in cramped lines forming narrow streets and small plazas. Often plazas have leather and cloth awnings to shield them from falling and slowly gathering ash of the nearby lava rivers. Most buildings are dark brown due to the color of the stone available close by. An imposing stronghold called the Slag Fort, which houses the garrison and Prefectus in its great hall, was built upon the single large hill of the south side. Large warehouses can be found pretty frequently in the outer districts of town, along with smelting forges and furnaces. Some buildings are outside the walls, typically inhabited by the poor. History. The reborn empire soon moved back to the abandoned Smolderbone Flats after the calamity and found it ideal to settle because of the new resources that could be found there: salt, minerals, and even obsidian. Thus, the city of Avernum was built at the western border of the flats. Under the control of an appointed governor called the Prefectus, the city mostly lacks the religious apparatus of provincial settlements, but has a fairly large military presence. Rumor is that due to its backwater status, Avernum follows imperial regulations more loosely, and it is essentially a private kingdom of the Prefectus. Controlling the city from the Slag Fort, he sends his personal army, the Avernus Legion, to handle his business. Because many comitati carry obsidian and even metal through here, there's an unusual density of weapon craftsmen and even blacksmiths in Avernum. One can find several forges and smithies on the main street. and we're trying to head to Devon via Vernum and Ash. So Ash is another city, or Ash is a township between the searing plains and jagged waste, aptly named after the permanent ash-covered plain that it was built next to. Excuse me. The color of the ash-like silt here is gray, and this material covers most of Ash's streets and low stone buildings. Ash is as far as an imperial road goes in the western provinces, and people claim it to be the last stop of civilization. These people have evidently never been to Ash, a hive of slaver scum and petty warlords barely contained by the small local garrison. Slaver pits and compounds with clear stone walls surround the town, but there's no fort or proper wall here. The small Legion garrison is set up in an abandoned compound on the west side. History. Nobody knows how the approximately 30-mile diameter ash field got there during the calamity, or why it does not dissipate, but it probably has to do with how the wind carries the silt down south from the ashlands. The town was built and settled by those who struck out west after the calamity in search of habitable lands. Their dreams faded when they faced the searing plains, and they ended up giving up and staying in this melancholy place. Ash has always been a gray, sad little settlement, but some wanderers and nomads come here to trade. Due to its proximity to savage lands, it has become a slaver town, and the slave market is thriving usually. Therefore, some major imperial trade houses keep well-guarded villas of their own in the center of Ash. There's a shortage of metal in Devon, and you know several buyers who would give a pretty price for your goods if you can only make it there before many others with a similar cargo do. Such contacts are the boon of the long decades spent on the road. But even if Narbo, that villain, gave you an agreeable price and scrap heap, the road is not without its perils. Sneaking through the gap between the dead forest and the molten tongue is inviting disaster, so it is not a path many Vagri would risk. And of course, if this fails, you are out of alternatives. So a path between dead forest and the molten tongue. The dead forest is a large woodland area which is counted as part of the land of shadows, situated between the Bronze Desert in the north and the searing plains in the south. Forever dark and foreboding, the trees in the glades still stand but are leafless, blackened, and look dead. The area is in constant gloom, which is neither day nor night. There is no wind, the stifling air does not move. Black char, the reminder of green leaves long gone, cover the ground everywhere. Nothing lives here and nothing moves except for spider-like beings in the north part of the woods that manage to spin their webs so thick that all light is blotted out by them. Whoever touches certain dead trees comes to an unknown but presumably horrible end. Legends say that these dead trees still hold a curse that kills swiftly and uncompromisingly, which has made lumbering rather risky if profitable. What used to be the shimmering woods before the calamity turned it into a bleak and desolate place called the Dead Forest following the cataclysm. Spanning a vast territory the size of a smaller province, the unified woodlands are a shadow of their former selves. The Empire was in no hurry to reclaim the foreboding place, and even today, apart from a few outposts gathering timber, nobody visits the forest. Wow, this is really cool lore. Do you think Narbo will help us out? The old scavenger was never famous for his goodwill, Javik wonders. One can only hope. I haven't seen him in years, but we always did good business. That said, you are not sure he would remember you or if he is alive at all. I'm sure such sleazy bastards as Narbo would remember all the business they've ever done, Vagrus. Javik rubs his chin absent-mindedly. You have seen this expression of his too often not to realize he's using his sorcerer's talent to read your mind. Taking a peek? Apologies. Javik rubs his eyes quickly and looks away. You know how it is. It comes to me so naturally that sometimes I don't notice I'm doing it. Your thoughts were loud, Vagrus. I have to actually block them, you see. After joining your Comitatus 6 years ago, Javik proved to be an invaluable asset. Not only does he sense moods and thoughts around him, but he is also able to subtly manipulate others when he focuses his inner energies. Comes in handy when doing business. Then there are his other perks. A few times you saw him shatter the minds of men and beasts who tried to kill him. Not a pretty sight, but a very effective deterrence. Yet, because he is not a trained sorcerer, at least not in the traditional sense, his abilities are sometimes difficult to control. You've been accustomed to his impromptu thought scans, while others find it less bearable to be around him. For this reason, he has kept his abilities a secret for many years overall, but you can't keep a secret such as this for long in this close-knit community of a comitatus, especially not if you keep bursting minds and knowing things you shouldn't. So there are only a handful of your commies who put up with being near him for any length of time. But even so, he has not probed your mind in years, certainly not on purpose, but neither by accident. Perhaps he is less in control now, which suggests he is more on edge about this whole trip than he lets on. Apology accepted. You manage a faint smile. Let us return to the others and push on. There's still a day's travel ahead of us. Both of you head west to join the column. You go back to the Comitatus.
As we were coming up to the gates of Scrap Heap, this trash pile town of cutthroats and scavengers, we could see the vast mountain ranges of shattered Bivandar Thar looming ominously over the horizon, half shrouded in the gaseous vapors belched forth by the volcanoes in the far west. My companions prepared to do their business in town as fast as they could, not wishing to tarry in this notorious place.
Actually, let's save. How do I save? Save game. Manual saving is unavailable in the standalone story Pilgrim to the Wasteland. The game saves your progress automatically each time you reach a checkpoint in the story, when leaving a settlement, and also the start of every new in-game day. In the open world campaign, manual saving is available except during combat and events. Okay, so let's continue. When a comitatus enters a settlement, you can select from a variety of options, each on its separate pane, revolving around resting, resupplying, and trading. You also have the opportunity to initiate stories located in the settlement. This time only the story pane is active. Follow the only available story. Okay, so these would be other things we could click. At the foot of the ever-fuming mountains of the ancient dwarven kingdom lies Scrap Heap, the town of scavengers. Debris and junk is piled into veritable hills, upon which the rickety homes of the decrepit inhabitants stand precariously. Ash lingers everywhere, and the sun is almost always absent from the twilit skies. Deals are struck day and night over the precious metal scraps gathered in the ruins of nearby Devendar Thar, while the Heap King oversees all from his dreaded tower. Shady eyes and soot-covered faces watch from under ash-laden awnings. Life is cheaper than iron here, some say. Track down Narbo. Kenny can be convinced to help you out. Alright, let's see how long we've been playing. Just, by the way, 32 minutes, okay. You make your way to the Wraith's Stash, a notorious watering hole tucked away in a small street just beneath the imposing tower of the Heap King, but not quite under its immense shadow. Few frequent the establishment, which makes it perfect for Narbo and its little operation of honest merchants. Apparently, the knave is not only alive, but has done well for himself in the past decade or so. Taking only Javik, you leave the Comitatus to the care of Titus, your quartermaster, while you are gone negotiating. Ashes flitting from the black sky as you cross the street and nod to the bouncer of the Wraith's Stash. You give him your sidearms quietly. Rules are rules, at least as long as they can enforce them, yet they have the courtesy of allowing you to keep your dagger, and of course they have no idea what Javik is capable of should it come to a scuffle. Not that you expect such a thing, but with Narbo one never knows. Though you have told your crew that he and you go way back, the entrepreneur is a capricious and manipulative man with whom you do not part on the best of terms. Does he remember that? Surely. Could he be persuaded to take your proposal? Who knows? Your eyes slowly adjust to the dimness of the tavern's interior. Only a few candles and a lamp at the bar illuminate the common room. Shadowy faces turn toward you and observe you through the smoke. The bartender, a thick-set man in a dirty tunic, is chewing tobacco serenely. Above the bar hangs the skeleton of a large heap lizard on display. Narbo is sitting at the table in the back, his bodyguard half hidden in the darkness at the wall behind him. Walk over to the bar. The bartender stifles a belch and nods his greetings. What can I do you for? The way he grabs an earthenware mug suggests that it would probably be best to order something. You glance at Javik briefly before paying for 2 rounds of a local mushroom brew called Ash Tongue. It is somewhat less loathsome than you imagined. Leaning over your drink, you quietly tell the barman that you are here to see Narbo. Are you now? He is doing calculations and he don't like to be bothered when he's doing calculations. He indicates Narbo at the corner table with a nod. The entrepreneur is indeed busy poring over a stack of papers and fiddling with the calculus. Wait until he's done with his papers, at least you can finish your beer. You chat with the bartender while sipping your beer. Most of it is boring small talk, but when the conversation turns into a discussion of local prices, you notice Javik's stern expression in the small hand gesture he makes. This is a signal you two have been using for a long time now, indicating that he has gleaned something from the man's surface thoughts. When minutes later the bartender goes to the back to check on the kitchen, Javik leans closer. Apparently there's a supplier of meat and mushrooms that has a surplus on his hands he wants to get rid of quickly. You can't help but smile and nod. This could save you quite a lot of coin. Also, your friend Narbo seems to be having some trouble with a package. In his mind, it is constant frustration in connection to the Heap King. You nod to Javik and notice how the sleazy merchant has stopped fiddling with the calculus and is now looking at some papers listlessly. It is time. Walk over to Narbo's table. The entrepreneur looks up from a stack of papers in front of him and rubs his eyes. Narbo is a corpulent man with a bushy dark beard and a few missing teeth. Part of his face is covered in scars similar to those left by old burns. That, coupled with the withered and mutated left arm that hangs limply at his side, is a clear indication of the taint. The merchant wears a leather jerkin studded with a small bronze and bone coins, a sign of wealth and boldness. His bodyguard, a lithe man with tribal tattoos and an outfit made of leather, moves his hand calmly to a spear that leans against the wall. Narbo's mouth falls open as the spark of recognition flares up in his eyes. No wonder, it has been 10 years. The fuck, mate? He blinks. I thought you croaked. People, Narbo waves his good hand around and looks at the bodyguard. Told tales of your demise. The man finishes his sentence for him as the merchant nods vehemently. That business with Kernak Outpost in the storm, Narbo adds. You tell him that you were indeed at Kernak when the terrible arcane storm struck. You describe the horrors of that night briefly. You add how many of your original Kamitatas died there, close friends, old traveling companions. But you walked away unscathed. This was years ago. Sheesh, that fucker Irophons looked over you something fierce, eh? Narbo chuckles heartily. But I'm sure you haven't come to reminisce about good old times, eh? His predatory smile makes you cautious, even though he invites you to sit down with a casual wave of his meaty hand. Apologize to him for the unfortunate way you parted 10 years ago. Far as I can tell, you never did anything against me, eh? Narbo shrugs with a wry smile. Of course, you could have sent someone to warn us. The bodyguard finishes the sentence. Back when Narbo and you parted ways, Avernum's Collegium was hot on your trails. They got offended by how you two outplayed them by smuggling in a shipment of exotic spices without their knowledge and selling it to a local nobleman's merchant house. Collegium. A collegium is a traditional imperial association, a kind of guild with its own rules, rights, and obligations. In the Fourth Age, they have become little more than organized crime syndicates that run the underworld of imperial cities. Collegia originate from the early days of the Third Age, from the capital city of Zarin, where merchants and craftsmen began to organize themselves into guilds and unions to protect their rights or manipulate the market to their advantage. The Senate soon stepped in to regulate these associations, which led to intense political struggle. The Collegia were eventually given rights along with obligations. Many of them oversaw parts of civic life or services. For example, the Carpenters' Collegium was responsible for repairing city buildings in exchange for exclusive rights in lumbering and carpentry businesses. The institutions soon spread to other imperial cities and provinces, now each with their own set of guilds and associations operating under imperial law. Even during the Golden Age, Collegia began to dissolve into organized crime syndicates when the opportunistic and unscrupulous members of society began to see a chance to hide behind the law and spread their influence through the Collegia. The Fourth Age saw the return of Collegia and the associated crime syndicates to the capital and large cities that were reclaimed by the Empire. Their operations have become more and more brazen, and people are so accustomed to their ways that nobody ever thinks of questioning them. Structure and activity. Collegia are rarely involved in civic duties nowadays and are rights-protecting organizations only on the surface. Instead, they oversee all criminal activity in cities, including racketeering, prostitution, smuggling, fencing, burglary, begging, and gambling dens. They often have a great say in the mercenary work and even sports activities like gladiator fights or chariot races. Most collegia are run by a single strong leader whose person may often change thanks to brutal power struggles. Under the leader are the captains, trusted officers who run most of the day-to-day business. Under them are members who are fully accepted into the collegium and are often responsible for an area of the city or a specific business. This essentially creates a criminal life model and rank ladder that can be climbed. City officials are seldom ignorant of collegia activity and are more likely to be members themselves in secret, or at least benefit from bribes to remain silent. You look at Narbo and tell him there was no way of warning him or even knowing where he was after the chaos was unleashed following the heist in Avernum. You had to get your crew out of there, so you did. The merchant is fiddling thoughtfully with a stack of papers while listening to you. I appreciate you coming clean, even if this sorry business was so many years ago, he says after a long pause. The bodyguard becomes visibly less tense. But something tells me that ain't all you came for still, so what is it? You breathe in. Time to outline your proposition. Okay, guys. To make this episode a bit shorter, I'm going to save here, but it's not actually going to save. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and pick this up in episode 2. And that way we'll have the whole of episode 2 to get through this. But I'll have to exit to the main menu and replay that starting section off camera to get back here. Like, I can't continue, but it's all good. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you'll join me for this. It's going to be a lot of fun. Already we're into a lot of reading and interesting lore and stuff, and we're going to be exploring this world, so it's going to be super cool. So I hope you join me for that. Hope you enjoyed this first opening episode. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate you all. Feel free to check out my other videos on my channel if you'd like. I'm always starting new games and playing different RPGs and stuff. Hope you're enjoying all of that. And much love, peace, and joy, guys, as always. And I'll see you next time with more Vagrus, the Riven Realms. Bye-bye.